He gave his horse to a limping giant warrior. At sunrise, uses his barn as a gold vault. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with the story. The sun was setting behind the vast expanse of the open plains as Jesse Walker, a rugged rancher, was out in the fields, tending to his cattle. The wind howled through the dry grass, carrying the scent of dust and a promise of an approaching storm. Jesse had lived alone for most of his life, far from the nearest town, his only company the animals he cared for. A man of few words, Jesse had always found solace in the simple, hard work of ranching. But today, something was different. As he made his way back to the barn, he spotted a figure in the distance, stumbling toward him. At first, Jesse thought it was a mirage, the heat of the day playing tricks on his eyes. But as the figure drew closer, Jesse could see it clearly, a giant warrior, limping with a severe wound on his leg. His clothes were tattered, and his face, though fierce, showed signs of exhaustion. Despite his massive size, the warrior moved with a certain grace, his dark eyes filled with determination. Jesse's first instinct was to turn away, to ignore the stranger and keep to himself. But something in the warrior's gaze stopped him. The man's struggle was clear, and Jesse knew he couldn't simply leave him out there to die in the heat. He walked over slowly, unsure of what to expect, but driven by something deeper than fear, a need to help. "You need help, stranger?" Jesse called out. The warrior paused, his breath heavy, and then nodded. "My horse. It's gone," the warrior said, his voice rough, like it hadn't been used in days. Jesse looked at the warrior's injured leg, then at the horse tracks that led away into the distance. He could see the pain in the man's eyes, the kind of pain that came from more than just physical injury. It was a pain Jesse knew all too well. The warrior's world was falling apart, and Jesse, though a man of few words, understood that kind of desperation. Without another word, Jesse led the giant warrior to his barn. He didn't have much, just his old mare and a couple of workhorses, but he knew he had to give the warrior something. "Take my horse," Jesse said, walking over to the corral where his best mare stood. She was old, but strong, and she had served him well over the years. "She's not much, but she'll get you where you need to go." The warrior's eyes widened slightly, as if he couldn't believe the kindness. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, accepting the horse. "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. Jesse watched him mount the horse with difficulty, his massive frame almost too much for the mare. As the warrior rode off into the night, Jesse felt a strange sense of fulfillment. He didn't know why, but something about helping this man felt right. As the night drew on, Jesse retired to his small cabin, thinking little of the event. But as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, he awoke to a sound that made his heart skip a beat. He could hear the thunder of hooves, dozens of them, coming closer and closer. Jesse rushed outside, his heart pounding in his chest. What he saw left him speechless. A great army of warriors, riding on horseback, had gathered outside his barn. They wore traditional armor, their faces painted with symbols that Jesse couldn't understand. But what shocked him the most was their reverence. The warriors didn't approach with hostility or anger. Instead, they knelt before him, their heads bowed in respect. At the front of the group was the giant warrior he had helped the night before, his face now radiating with pride and power. He dismounted, walked up to Jesse, and placed something in his hands, a golden pendant, engraved with intricate designs. "You have shown kindness to me," the warrior said, his voice deep and powerful. "And for that, you will never want for anything again." The warriors then stood in unison, and as the sun rose higher, Jesse realized that his humble barn had been transformed into a vault of gold. The warriors had left riches beyond anything he could have imagined, as a symbol of their gratitude. What had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a miracle. Jesse stood there, holding the pendant, unsure of what to do next. But in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. Kindness, when given freely, had a way of coming back in ways one could never expect. The sun had fully risen now, casting its golden light over the quiet ranch as Jesse stood at the edge of his barn, still clutching the golden pendant the warrior had given him. The air was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the warmth that had settled in his chest. As he looked at the warriors gathered outside, their faces painted with solemn respect, he felt both humbled and confused. What had just happened? He had helped a stranger, a wounded giant warrior, and in return, he had received more than he could have ever imagined. The warriors continued to kneel, not a single one of them moving, their eyes fixed on Jesse with a reverence that made his heart race. The leader, the giant warrior who had received his horse the night before, stepped forward once again. His broad frame seemed to absorb the morning light, and his voice, when he spoke, resonated with the authority of someone who had seen and conquered much. You have done more than simply help a traveler. You have done what no other would dare. Jesse was still processing the events, trying to make sense of it all. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked down at the gold in his hands, then up at the man before him. What is this? What do you want from me? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. The warrior's gaze softened, but his voice remained steady. We come to honor you, Jesse Walker. Your kindness has reached beyond what we could repay with simple thanks. This gold, this treasure, is yours now. It is a symbol of the bond you have forged with us. But there is more. Jesse took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. Gold? What do I need gold for? I'm just a rancher. I don't want anything in return for helping you. The giant warrior smiled, a rare and genuine smile that seemed to break through the stoic exterior. It is not about what you want, Jesse. It is about what you deserve. You see, our people have a code of honor. When someone shows true kindness, when they risk their own well-being for another, they are bound by that same code to repay the debt, not just in wealth, but in loyalty. Jesse stood there, stunned, as the implications of the warrior's words began to sink in. The gold was not just a gift. It was a mark of something much deeper, a connection that transcended mere chance. The warriors before him were not just paying him back. They were offering something far more valuable. What kind of loyalty? Jesse asked, his voice low. What do you want from me? The warrior's expression grew serious. We are in need, Jesse. Our people have been torn apart by war, by betrayal, and by the struggle for survival. We cannot survive much longer without allies. We seek your protection, your strength. You have shown that you are not like the others. You are a man of honor, and we will fight beside you if you accept our offer. Jesse's mind raced. This was a far cry from the life he had known. He had spent his days alone, tending to his cattle, living a simple life. But now, he was being offered the loyalty of a tribe, a group of warriors who would stand by him in the face of any challenge. It was too much to comprehend, but something deep inside him stirred, a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He looked down at the gold in his hand, then back at the warrior, who waited patiently for his response. I don't know what to say, Jesse admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I'm just a rancher. I've never been a leader, never been a warrior. The warrior placed a hand on Jesse's shoulder, a gesture of reassurance. You don't have to be a warrior, Jesse. You just have to stand with us. Your kindness is your strength, and that strength is what we need. Together, we can rebuild what was lost. For a moment, Jesse stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had never asked for anything in return for his good deeds, but here he was, being offered the kind of loyalty and respect most men could only dream of. Finally, he nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of fear and excitement. I will stand with you, he said, his voice firm. I don't know what the future holds, but I'll do what I can to help. The giant warrior smiled again, his eyes filled with gratitude. Then, together, we will protect what is ours. And we will begin by taking back what was stolen from us. The warriors stood and mounted their horses, their movements synchronized and deliberate. Jesse felt a sense of awe as they rode off, their powerful horses kicking up dust as they disappeared into the distance. As he watched them go, Jesse realized that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet understand. But one thing was certain. He had made a choice, and it was a choice that would bind him to something greater than himself. He was no longer just a rancher. He was now part of something much larger, something powerful, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. The days that followed Jesse's decision to stand with the warriors were filled with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. His ranch, once a quiet and solitary place, had become the focal point of a much larger purpose. Each morning, Jesse would wake to the sound of hooves echoing through the plains, a constant reminder of the warriors who had pledged their loyalty to him. The weight of that loyalty rested heavily on his shoulders, but he knew deep down that this was a path he could not turn away from. As the weeks passed, Jesse became more involved in the tribe's efforts. They shared their knowledge with him, teaching him the ways of survival, the intricacies of battle, and the importance of unity. It wasn't long before he learned that the tribe had been displaced from their ancestral lands, driven out by greed and violence. The warriors had been fighting to reclaim their territory, but it had been a struggle, one that had cost them dearly. But now, with Jesse by their side, they had a chance to succeed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the warrior leader approached Jesse with a solemn expression. "We are preparing for a final assault on the men who took our land," he said. "We need you, Jesse, not as a warrior, but as a symbol. Your presence will strengthen our cause. We fight for what is rightfully ours, but we also fight for those who have no voice." Jesse listened carefully, his heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. He had never been a soldier, but he knew that this battle was about more than just land. It was about justice, honor, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. He stood tall, meeting the warrior's gaze. "I'll stand with you," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes, I'll stand with you." The next few days were filled with preparation. The warriors sharpened their weapons, practiced their tactics, and made sure their horses were ready for the battle that would soon come. Jesse, though not a fighter, spent his time helping where he could, making sure the warriors had enough provisions, organizing the camp, and offering words of encouragement. As the night before the battle arrived, the camp grew quieter. The warriors gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Jesse sat with them, feeling the weight of the moment settling in. He knew that tomorrow, everything could change. The following morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the warriors mounted their horses and prepared to ride out. Jesse stood by the edge of the camp, watching them. The warrior leader rode up to him, offering him a firm handshake. "This is it," he said. "Are you ready?" Jesse nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew that he couldn't turn back now. "Let's do it," he said, his voice calm. The warriors rode off, a sea of horses and warriors moving in perfect unity. Jesse followed behind, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where the land he had promised to protect lay in wait. As they approached the enemy camp, Jesse could feel the tension in the air. The battle was about to begin. The warriors had trained for this moment, and now they were ready to reclaim what was theirs. Jesse rode alongside them, his heart racing as they neared the enemy's defenses. The clash of weapons, the shouts of battle, and the thunder of hooves filled the air as the two sides met in the open field. Jesse watched in awe. As the warriors moved with precision, each strike, each movement, a testament to their skill and determination. But it wasn't just the warriors who fought that day, it was the entire tribe. Jesse knew that the battle wasn't just about fighting for land. It was about fighting for their future, for the generations that would follow. Hours passed, and the battle raged on. Jesse's hands were clenched tightly around the reins, his heart heavy with the weight of the fight. He could see the warriors pressing forward, their determination unwavering, and he knew that this battle would determine everything. As the sun began to set, the tide of battle began to turn. The enemy forces, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the tribe's united front, began to retreat. Jesse watched as the warriors pushed forward, their courage and strength undeniable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the battle ended. The tribe had won. The land was theirs once again. Jesse stood in the midst of the victorious warriors, feeling a sense of pride and relief wash over him. He had helped them reclaim what was rightfully theirs, and in doing so, he had found his place in a world much larger than he had ever imagined. As the warriors celebrated their hard-earned victory, Jesse knew that this was only the beginning. The journey was far from over, but he had made a choice, and that choice had led him to this moment. He had found his purpose, and in the process, he had become part of something far greater than himself. The days after the victory were filled with celebration, but also reflection. Jesse stood by the edge of his barn, watching the warriors as they repaired their weapons, tended to their horses, and shared stories of their past battles. The land was theirs once again, and the tribe was stronger than it had been in years. But for Jesse, the victory had come with a heavy heart. The battle had been hard, and the loss of life, on both sides, was something that weighed heavily on him. Though he had stood beside them and fought for their cause, he could not shake the feeling that there was more to this journey than he had anticipated. He had helped the tribe reclaim their land, but at what cost? The thought lingered in his mind, keeping him awake at night. It was in these moments of solitude that he realized just how much his life had changed since that fateful night when he had helped the wounded warrior. He was no longer just a rancher. He had become part of something much larger, something that had a responsibility to it. He had made a choice, and that choice had irrevocably altered the course of his life. As the days passed, Jesse found himself growing closer to the tribe, learning more about their traditions, their way of life, and their beliefs. The warrior leader, who had become like a brother to him, took him under his wing, teaching him the ways of the land and the spirit of the tribe. Jesse, in turn, shared his knowledge of farming and ranching, and they worked together to rebuild what had been lost during the years of struggle. One evening, as the sun began to set, the warrior leader called Jesse over to the campfire. "We need to speak," the leader said, his tone serious. Jesse sat down beside him, feeling a sense of unease settle in his chest. "What's on your mind?" he asked, trying to read the warrior's expression. The leader's eyes were filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "The land is ours once more," he said. "But there is still much to be done. The enemies we fought are not the only threat. There are others who will come for us, for what we have rebuilt." Jesse nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The tribe had reclaimed their land, but they knew that peace would be fleeting. There were always those who sought to take what wasn't theirs, to claim power and wealth at the expense of others. "What do you need from me?" Jesse asked, his voice steady. The warrior leader placed a hand on Jesse's shoulder. "Your strength, your loyalty," he said. "We will face many challenges ahead, but together, we can overcome them. We need your help to protect what we have worked so hard to rebuild." Jesse felt a surge of determination rise within him. He had already made the decision to stand with the tribe, but now, the stakes were higher. They were not just fighting for land anymore. They were fighting for survival, for their way of life. And Jesse knew that he could not walk away from that. "I'm with you," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever comes, I'll stand by your side." The warrior leader smiled, a rare expression of warmth on his face. "Then we are ready." The next few days were spent fortifying the camp, preparing for whatever might come next. The warriors trained harder than ever, while Jesse worked alongside them, reinforcing the defenses and ensuring that they had enough provisions to last through whatever challenges lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the air grew thicker. The enemy was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Jesse and the warriors were ready. They had fought for their land once, and they would do it again if necessary. One night, as the moon rose high in the sky, the sound of hooves broke the silence. Jesse stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle at his side. The warriors around him tensed, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. A lone rider appeared in the distance, riding hard toward the camp. As the rider drew closer, Jesse recognized him. It was the warrior leader's son, returning from a scouting mission. His face was grim, and his words carried a sense of urgency. "They are coming," he said, his voice breathless. "They've gathered an army, and they're heading straight for us." The warriors immediately sprang into action, preparing for battle. Jesse felt his heart race as he joined them, knowing that the time for peace had passed. The enemy was coming, and there was no turning back. As the warriors mounted their horses and rode out to meet the threat, Jesse followed behind, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. He had come so far since the day he had helped the wounded warrior, and now, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight to protect what they had rebuilt, and they would stand strong in the face of the enemy, no matter what. This was their land, and they would defend it with their lives. The tension in the camp was palpable as Jesse rode alongside the warriors, heading toward the enemy's position. His heart pounded with every beat, but his mind was focused. The sound of hooves reverberated in the night, mingling with the whispers of the wind. He had been through battles before, but this felt different. This was more than a fight for land. This was a fight for survival. As they neared the edge of the forest, where the enemy was said to be gathering, Jesse could see the faint flicker of campfires in the distance. The warriors, now silent and focused, tightened their grip on their weapons, preparing for what was to come. The moon hung high above them, casting a silver glow over the landscape, but the darkness still seemed to swallow everything in its path. Jesse felt his nerves tighten, but he knew there was no turning back now. The warrior leader, riding beside him, gave him a glance, and Jesse nodded, signaling that he was ready. The time had come. They had trained for this moment, and they would not falter. As the warriors approached the enemy's camp, they split into two groups, surrounding the area from all sides. Jesse found himself at the front with the leader, moving cautiously through the trees. They could see the enemy forces now, no more than 20 men, camped around their fire, laughing and shouting in the dark. Jesse's breath caught in his throat. These were the men who had taken the tribe's land, who had caused so much pain and suffering. He had always known there would be a moment like this, but now that it was here, he felt an overwhelming sense of duty. They had to be stopped. "We take them by surprise," the warrior leader whispered, his voice low but firm. "We strike fast and hard. Show them the power of the tribe." Jesse nodded, his hand tightening around the reins. He knew what had to be done. The warriors surged forward, moving like shadows through the trees. Jesse followed behind, his heart racing as they neared the camp. The sound of their horses' hooves was drowned out by the crackling of the fire and the voices of the enemy soldiers. In one swift motion, the warriors attacked. Screams filled the night air as the warriors descended upon the camp, their weapons flashing in the moonlight. Jesse's hand reached for his rifle, but before he could raise it, he saw the leader strike down the first enemy soldier. The sound of the man's body hitting the ground was deafening. The rest of the tribe followed suit, swiftly and decisively. Jesse joined the fight, his heart pounding as he took down one of the enemies who had been too slow to react. The chaos of battle swirled around him, but through it all, he kept his focus. The warriors were skilled, moving with a precision that was almost eerie. They were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for their future, for their people. As the battle raged on, Jesse found himself face to face with the leader of the enemy forces. The man was tall and broad, his face hardened by years of battle, but there was something in his eyes that made Jesse pause. The man had no fear, no hesitation. He was determined to win, no matter the cost. "You're fighting for the wrong side," Jesse said, his voice steady. The man sneered, raising his sword. "You think you've won? This land will never be yours." Jesse didn't flinch. "This land belongs to the people who protect it. And that's us." The man lunged, and Jesse narrowly dodged his strike, bringing his rifle up to block the next blow. The two men grappled, struggling for control, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Jesse's heart raced, but he held his ground, using the strength he had gained from his time with the warriors. He had made his choice. He was no longer just a rancher. He was a protector. The fight continued, but it was clear the tide had turned. The warriors had overwhelmed the enemy, and Jesse's fight with their leader was the last to be resolved. With one final move, Jesse knocked the man's sword from his hand, disarming him. The leader fell to the ground, panting. Jesse stood over him, his rifle aimed at the man's chest. "You've lost," Jesse said, his voice quiet but resolute. The man stared up at him, hatred still in his eyes. "You'll never be free," he spat. Jesse's gaze hardened. "We already are." The warriors gathered around, victorious. The enemy forces had been defeated, their camp destroyed. The tribe had won. As the dawn began to break, casting light over the battlefield, Jesse looked around at the faces of the warriors. They were tired, but they were proud. They had fought for their land, for their people, and they had won. And in that moment, Jesse realized that he, too, had fought for something much bigger than himself. He had fought for a future, for a legacy. The tribe had reclaimed their land, and Jesse had found his place among them. Together, they would rebuild, and together, they would stand strong. This was just the beginning. The victory had brought a brief moment of peace, but Jesse could feel the weight of what was to come. The battle had been won, but the land they had fought for was still in danger. The enemy forces had retreated, but Jesse knew they would be back. The fight for survival was never truly over. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the camp, Jesse sat with the warriors around the fire. The flames flickered in the cool evening air, their dance echoing the thoughts in his mind. He had found a place here, among these people, but the responsibility of protecting them weighed heavily on him. The warrior leader, the man who had once been a stranger, now sat beside him, his expression thoughtful. "We have won, but we cannot let our guard down," the leader said, his voice firm. "There will be others who will come for what we have. We must be ready." Jesse nodded, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. He had fought alongside them, and now he was part of their world. The bond they shared was stronger than anything he had ever known. "I'll stand with you," Jesse said, his voice steady. "We've fought for this land, and we'll keep fighting to protect it." The leader looked at him, his eyes filled with gratitude. "We are stronger together. You are more than just a rancher, Jesse. You are one of us." The words struck Jesse deeper than he expected. He had never imagined his life would take this turn. He had been a man of the land, a man of simplicity, but now he was part of something greater. The tribe, once broken and scattered, was beginning to rebuild. The warriors were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future, for their children, for their way of life. But Jesse knew the battle was far from over. As the days passed, he spent more time with the tribe, learning their ways, their customs, and their beliefs. The warriors taught him how to defend the land, how to move with stealth through the forest, how to track their enemies. He had always been a man of the earth, but now he was learning to be a man of the people. One afternoon, as Jesse worked with the warriors to reinforce the camp's defenses, the leader approached him once more. "There are rumors," the leader said, his voice low. "A new enemy, one that we have not yet faced. A group of mercenaries, hired by those who seek to destroy us. They are coming from the north." Jesse felt a chill run down his spine. The enemy forces had been bad enough, but mercenaries, hired guns, were a different kind of threat. They fought for money, not for land, and they didn't have the same honor or code that the tribe followed. "How many?" Jesse asked, his voice tense. The leader shook his head. "We don't know yet, but we have to be ready." Jesse's mind raced. The tribe had already faced so much. Could they withstand another attack? "What do you need from me?" Jesse asked, stepping closer. The leader looked at him, his eyes filled with determination. "We need you to lead the warriors. You know the land better than anyone. You've earned our trust. Will you stand with us once more?" Jesse felt the weight of the question, the weight of the responsibility. This was no longer just about protecting land. It was about protecting a family, a community, a future. He had already given so much, but now he knew there was no turning back. "I'll lead them," Jesse said, his voice steady and resolute. "Whatever it takes, I'll stand by your side." The leader nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Then we are ready. Together, we will fight, and we will not let them take what is ours." The next few days were spent preparing for the unknown. Jesse worked tirelessly with the warriors, fortifying their defenses, preparing weapons, and strategizing for the battle that lay ahead. He had become more than just a rancher. He was now a leader, a protector, someone who would do whatever it took to keep the tribe safe. As the warriors stood ready for battle, Jesse couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision he had made. This was the life he had chosen now, a life of uncertainty and danger. But in his heart, he knew it was the right choice. He wasn't just fighting for a piece of land anymore. He was fighting for something far more important, the future of the people he had come to care for, the people who had become his family. And he would fight for them, no matter what. The tension in the camp grew as the days passed, with the looming threat of the mercenaries becoming a constant concern. Jesse knew the time for preparation was nearly over. The warriors had gathered their strength, their resolve, but they had yet to face the unknown enemy. Each day, Jesse worked alongside them, reinforcing the camp's defenses, teaching them how to move in unison, and ensuring that their strategy was solid. But as the evening of the anticipated battle drew closer, a strange calm seemed to settle over Jesse. His thoughts raced, but his heart felt at peace. He had made his decision, and now it was time to see it through. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, the warrior leader approached him once again, his expression stern. "We know the enemy is coming, Jesse. We must not underestimate them. the leader said, his voice firm. They may have numbers, but we have the land. And we have each other. Jesse nodded. He had seen the determination in the eyes of the warriors, and he felt it in himself. He wasn't just fighting for land, for a place to call home. He was fighting for a future. The warriors, once scattered and broken, had come together under a shared cause. And now, they were stronger than ever. We fight as one, Jesse said quietly. Together, we'll show them the strength of this land, and the strength of our people. The night before the battle, Jesse sat alone by the fire, his rifle resting at his side. The crackling flames provided the only light in the darkened camp. He thought back to when he had first met the warrior leader, when he had been a simple rancher, alone in the wilderness. Back then, he never could have imagined that he would find himself here, leading a tribe of warriors into battle. But now, as he gazed at the flickering fire, he understood. It wasn't about the battle or the victory. It was about standing for what was right, no matter the cost. As the night wore on, the warriors gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the glow. They shared stories of their ancestors, of the strength they had inherited, and the battles they had fought. There was no fear in their voices, only a deep sense of purpose. Jesse felt a deep connection to them. They had become his family, and he was willing to give everything to protect them. The morning of the battle arrived, and the warriors prepared themselves for what was to come. Jesse could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The enemy forces were close, and it was only a matter of time before the battle would begin. The warriors mounted their horses, ready for the fight ahead. Jesse stood at the front of the camp, his rifle in hand, his heart steady. "This is it," the warrior leader said, riding up beside him. "Are you ready?" Jesse looked at him, his eyes filled with resolve. "I'm ready," he said. "We'll stand together, no matter what." The warriors moved out, riding through the trees toward the enemy camp. The sound of their hooves was like thunder, reverberating through the forest. As they neared the camp, Jesse could see the enemy forces in the distance. The mercenaries had arrived, and they were ready for a fight. But Jesse knew they would not be able to break the spirit of the warriors. They were fighting for something greater than gold or land. They were fighting for their future. The battle began with a sudden crash of chaos. The mercenaries, though armed and ruthless, were no match for the unity and skill of the tribe. The warriors fought with precision, their movements synchronized, each blow landing with purpose. Jesse fought alongside them, his rifle steady as he picked off the enemy one by one. The battle raged on, but Jesse knew that they were winning. The mercenaries were beginning to falter, their ranks thinning as the warriors pressed forward. He could see the fear in their eyes as they realized they were losing. The warrior leader fought fiercely at Jesse's side, his sword flashing in the sunlight as he cut through the enemy forces. Jesse's heart swelled with pride. These were the people he had come to call family. They were stronger than any enemy they could face. As the battle came to a close, the warriors stood victorious. The mercenaries had been defeated, their camp destroyed. Jesse looked around at the faces of his brothers and sisters, his family, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had fought for their land, for their people, and they had won. The tribe had proven that nothing could take away their spirit. As the sun set on the battlefield, Jesse knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The tribe had been tested, and they had emerged stronger than ever. Jesse had found his purpose, his place in the world. He had fought for something greater than himself, and in doing so, he had found the true meaning of strength and loyalty. As the days passed after the victory, Jesse's heart began to settle into a rhythm. The battle with the mercenaries had tested the tribe in ways they hadn't imagined, but they had emerged victorious. The dust had cleared, the smoke had faded, and now, with the enemy pushed back, there was a sense of peace in the air. The warriors who had fought alongside him now greeted him as an equal. They no longer saw him just as a rancher, but as someone who had earned his place among them. They had come together to defend what was theirs, but now, Jesse saw a new challenge before him: rebuilding. The land had been secured, but it was still raw, scarred from the past battles. Jesse spent his days working alongside the warriors, restoring the camp, rebuilding homes, and setting the stage for a future that could once again thrive. It wasn't easy. Many of the warriors had lost family and friends, their homes had been destroyed, and their way of life had been threatened. But they had hope now. And hope, Jesse realized, was just as important as the strength of their weapons. One evening, as the sun began to set, the warrior leader approached him once more. There was something different in his eyes, something that spoke of a greater responsibility. "We've fought many battles, Jesse," the leader said, his voice calm but filled with weight. "But we cannot win the war without unity. It is not just about protecting what we have, but about building something new, something lasting. This land is our heritage, but it is also our future." Jesse stood silently, taking in the leader's words. He had fought beside them. He had shed blood alongside these warriors, and he had helped them reclaim their land. But the leader was right. The future was what mattered now. "What can I do?" Jesse asked, his voice steady, but his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility. The warrior leader looked at him with a glimmer of respect. "You have proven yourself as a protector, Jesse. But now, we need you to lead. We need someone who understands this land, someone who can help us rebuild. You have a way with the earth, with the animals. We need that." Jesse's chest tightened. He had always seen himself as a simple man, a rancher, a keeper of animals and land. But now, it seemed, the role he had once shied away from was thrust upon him. The tribe needed him. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about leadership, vision, and hope. "I don't know if I'm the right man for that," Jesse said quietly. The leader placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of understanding. "You've already led us into battle, Jesse. Now, you must help us lead ourselves into a new beginning. You are part of this tribe, and we trust you." That night, as Jesse lay in his tent, the weight of the decision pressed heavily on him. He had already given so much of himself, but now he was being asked to give even more, to step up as a leader of a people who had lost so much. He thought of the ranch, of his life before the battles had begun, the quiet, the solitude, the simplicity. But now, that life seemed like a distant memory. There was no going back, and part of him didn't want to. The next morning, Jesse stood before the gathered tribe, the firelight flickering in their eyes as they watched him closely. The warrior leader had introduced him as their new leader, the one who would help them rebuild. Jesse's heart pounded in his chest, but he spoke with a voice that had become stronger in the days since the battle. "We've fought for this land. We've shed blood for it. And now, we will rebuild it together. This land belongs to all of us, and we will make sure it flourishes again." The warriors and the tribe cheered, their voices filled with hope. Jesse knew that this wasn't the end of their journey. It was the beginning of something new. They had survived, and now they would thrive. In the days that followed, Jesse worked alongside the tribe, guiding them in, restoring their homes, planting crops, and rebuilding their community. It wasn't easy, and there were many challenges ahead, but Jesse knew that they could overcome them. Together, as the months passed, the tribe's settlement began to take shape. Homes were rebuilt, fields were planted, and the land, once again, became a symbol of hope and resilience. The warriors who had once fought to protect their people now worked alongside the farmers, the children, the elders. They had become a true community, united by their shared experiences and their hopes for the future. And through it all, Jesse stood at the heart of it. He was no longer just a rancher. He was a leader, a protector, and a symbol of what it meant to fight for what was rightfully theirs. The tribe had been tested, but they had emerged stronger than ever. And Jesse, the man who had once lived a life of solitude, had now found a family, a people, and a future worth fighting for. As the seasons passed, the tribe flourished under Jesse's leadership. The once desolate land, scarred by war, was now teeming with life. The fields, once barren, were now full of crops, and the homes, which had been reduced to rubble, stood strong and proud. The warriors, once hardened by endless battles, now worked side by side with the farmers, the children, and the elders, building a community that was stronger than ever. Jesse had found his place among them, not just as a protector, but as a symbol of what could be accomplished through unity and perseverance. There were still challenges ahead, of course. The world outside the tribe's camp remained uncertain, and there were always threats lurking in the distance. But Jesse no longer feared them. He had learned that strength wasn't just in the weapons you carried or the battles you fought. It was in the bonds you forged, in the community you built, and in the hope you carried for the future. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Jesse sat at the edge of the camp, watching the warriors train in the distance. The fire crackled behind him, casting long shadows across the land. His mind wandered back to the day he had first met the warrior leader, back when he had been nothing more than a rancher, alone in the wilderness. He had never imagined that his life would take such a turn, that he would be standing here, leading a tribe of warriors, fighting for their land and their future. But now, as he looked at the thriving community around him, he knew that this was where he was meant to be. The warrior leader approached, his face filled with pride. "You have done what no one else could, Jesse," he said, his voice steady. "You have helped us rebuild. You have shown us that there is more to life than fighting. You have shown us the power of hope." Jesse looked at him, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. "We've all done it together," he replied. "This is our land, our future. We're in this together." The warrior leader nodded, his gaze moving over the camp. "It is true, but it is you who showed us the way. And for that, we are grateful." Jesse felt a warmth in his chest. He had never asked for thanks, never sought recognition. He had simply done what he believed was right. And now, seeing the tribe united and strong, he realized that his actions had made a difference, that he had helped to shape the future of the people he had come to care for. As the night grew darker, the tribe gathered around the fire. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, of warriors sharing stories, of children playing, and of elders offering their wisdom. Jesse sat among them, his heart at peace. He had found his family, his purpose, and a future worth fighting for. The battle for the land had been fought and won. But the real battle, the one that would shape the future, was the one they had fought to build something lasting, something that would stand the test of time. Jesse knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would not always be easy, but as long as they stood together, as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The land was theirs, and so was their future. And as the fire flickered into the night, Jesse felt a deep sense of contentment. This was home. This was where he belonged. Immerse yourself in an unforgettable journey with this gripping tale of courage, unity, and resilience in the heart of the Wild West. This powerful story of a rancher turned leader, standing side by side with a tribe of warriors, brings to life the spirit of survival and the strength of community. As Jesse, the rancher, discovers his true purpose, he helps rebuild a shattered tribe and faces countless challenges that threaten the land and the people he has come to protect. These Western stories captivate with their rich narratives of overcoming adversity and building something enduring in a harsh, unforgiving world. As Jesse's bond with the warriors grows, they fight not only for survival, but to preserve their way of life, creating a powerful legacy. Through every battle, every struggle, these Western stories teach the value of hope, trust, and standing together. The tale unfolds with remarkable characters, breathtaking action, and a deep sense of belonging that resonates with the heart. With each page turned, readers are drawn deeper into these Western stories that reflect the timeless fight for freedom, justice, and a future that can be claimed. This is a true testament to the enduring power of Western stories, where the line between heroism and survival is often blurred, and every decision carries the weight of generations. Discover how unity and courage can turn the tide of fate, and how one man's resolve can change the course of history in these remarkable Western stories.